by giants of productive energy such as Alice Wyatt, whom it would help to reach higher and still higher achievements of their own? Yes, said Reardon eagerly. Did you want to see it used by men who could not equal the power of your mind, but who would equal your moral integrity? Men such as Eddie Willis, who would never invent your metal, but who would do their best, work as hard as you did, live by their own effort, and riding on your rail, give a moment's silent thanks to the man who gave them more than they could give him? Yes, said Reardon gently. Did you want to see it used by whining rotters, who never roused themselves to any effort, who not possess the ability of a filling clerk, but demand the income of company president, who drift from failure to failure and expect you to pay their bills, who hold their vision as an equivalent of your work, and their need as higher claim to reward higher than your effort, who demand that you serve them, who demand that it be the aim of your life to serve them, who demand that your strength be the voiceless, rightless, unpaid, unrewarded slave of their impotence, who proclaim that you are born to serve them by the reason of your genius, while they are born to rule by the grace of incompetence, that yours is only to give, but theirs is only to take, that yours is to produce, theirs to consume, that you are not to be paid, neither in matter of spirit, neither in a matter of wealth, nor by recognition, nor by respect, nor by gratitude, so that they would ride on your rail and sneer at you, and curse you, and since they owe you nothing, not even the effort of taking off their hats which you paid for, would this be what you wanted? Would you feel proud of it? I blast that rail first, said Reardon, his lips white. Then why don't you do it, Mr. Reardon? Of the three kinds of men I described, which men are being destroyed and which are using your line today? They are the distant metal heartbeats of the mills to the long thread of silence. What I described last, said Francisca, is any man who proclaims his right to a single penny of another man's effort. Reardon did not answer. He was looking at the reflection of a neon sign on dark windows in the distance. You take pride in settling no limit to your endurance, Mr. Reardon, because you think that you are going to do it right. What if you aren't? What if you place your virtue in the service of evil, and letting it become a tool for destruction of everything you love, respect, and admire? Why don't you uphold your own code of values among men as you do among iron smelters? You who would not allow 1% of impurity into an alloy of metal, what have you allowed in your moral code? Reardon sat very still. The words in his mind were like a beat of steps down the trail he had been seeking. The words were the sanction of the victim. You who would not submit to the hardships of nature, but set out to conquer it and placed it in the service of your joy and your comfort, to what have you submitted at the hands of men? You who know from your work that one bears punishment only for being wrong, what have you been willing to bear, and for what reason? All your life you have heard yourself denounced, not for your faults, but for your greatest virtues. You have been hated, not for your mistakes, but for your achievements. You have been scorned for all those qualities of character which that you are highest pride. You have been called selfish for the courage of acting on your own judgment and bearing sole responsibility for your own life. You have been called arrogant for your independent mind. You have been called cruel for your unaliened integrity. You have been called antisocial for the vision that made you venture upon undiscovered roads. You have been called ruthless for the strength and self-discipline of your drive to your purpose. You have been called greedy for the magnificence of your power to create wealth. You, who have expended an inconceivable flow of energy, has been called a parasite. You, who created an abundance where there was nothing but a wasteland and helpless starving men before you, have been called a robber. You, who kept them all alive, have been called an exploiter. You, the purest and the most moral man among them, have been sneered as a vulgar materialist. Have you stopped to ask them, by what right, by what code, by what standard? No, you have been born in all and kept silent. You bowed to the code and you never held your own. You knew what exacting morality was needed to produce a single metal nail, but you let them brand you as immoral. You knew that man needs the strictest code of values to deal with nature, but you thought that you need no such code to deal with man. You leave the deadliest weapon in the hands of your enemies, a weapon you never suspected or understood. Their moral code is their weapon. Ask yourself how deeply and in how many terrible ways you have accepted it. Ask yourself what is it that the code of moral values does to man's life, and why he can't exist without it, and what happens to him if he accepts the wrong standard by which the evil is the good. Shall I tell you why you're drawn to me, even though you think you ought to damn me? It's because I'm the first man who had given you what the whole world owes you, and what you should have demanded for all men before you dealt with them, a moral sanction. Reardon whirled to him, then remained still, with stillness like a gasp. Francisco leaned forward as if he were reaching the landing of dangerous flight, and his eyes were steady, but the glance seemed to tremble with intensity. You're guilty of great sin, Mr. Reardon. Much guiltier than they tell you, but not in the way they preach. The worst guilt is to accept an undeserved guilt, and that is what you have been doing all your life. You have been paying blackmail, not for your vices, but for your virtues. You have been willing to carry the load of unearned punishments, and toilet it grow the heavier in the way virtues you practiced. But your virtues were those which keep men alive. Your own moral code, the one you lived by, but never stated, acknowledged, or defended, was the code that preserves man's existence. If you were punished for it, what was the nature of those who punished you? Yours was the code of life. What then is theirs? What standard of value lies at its root? What is its ultimate purpose? Do you think that what you're facing is merely a conspiracy to seize your wealth? You who know the source of wealth should know it's much more and much worse than that. Did you ask me to the name man's motive power? Man's motive power is his moral code. Ask yourself where the code is leading you and what it offers to you as your final goal. A viler evil than to murder a man is to sell him suicide as an act of virtue. A viler evil than to throw a man into a sacrificial furnace is to demand that he leap in it, of his own will, and that he build the furnace besides. By their own statement, it is they who need you and have nothing to offer you in return. By their own statements, you must support them because they cannot survive without you. Consider the obscenity of offering their impotence and their need of you, as a justification for your torture. Are you willing to accept it? Do you care to purchase, at the price of your great endurance, at the price of your agony, the satisfaction of the needs of your own destroyers? No. Mr. Reardon, said Francisco, his voice solemnly cold. If you saw Atlas, the giant who holds the world on his shoulders, if you saw that he stood, blood running down his chest, his knees buckling, his arms trembling but still trying to hold the world aloft with the last of his strength, and the greater his effort, the heavier the world bore down upon his shoulders, what would you tell him to do? I don't know. What could he do? What would you tell him? To shrug. The clatter of metal came in flow of irregular sounds without the simple rhythm, not like the action of mechanism, but as if some conscious impulse were behind every sudden, tearing rise that went up and crashed, scattering to the faint moan of gears. The glass of the window tinkled once in a while. Francisco's eyes were watching Reardon as he was examining the course of bullets on a battered target. The course was hard to trace. The gaunt figure on the edge of the desk was erect. The cold blue eyes showed nothing but the intensity of glance fixed upon a great distance. Only the inflexible mouth betrayed a line drawn by pain. Go on, said Reardon with effort. Continue. You haven't finished, have you? I have barely begun. Francisco's voice was hard. What are you driving at? You'll know before I'm through. But first I want to ask a question. If you understand the nature of your burden, how can you... The scream of alarm siren shattered the space beyond the window, and shot like a rocket along thin eye to the sky.